Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.
Hello and welcome to Nirmal, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. We have with us Nitin Soni, Senior Director, ACA at Fitch Ratings, joining in. Nitin, welcome to the show and always a pleasure to speak to you. Nitin, the last time we spoke as well, we were trying to understand what's the impact that COVID had on the telecom sector. In some way, there have been a lot of positives that have come in. However, how would you actually describe the period from last March to now?
Yeah, thanks, Hiral, for having me on the show. So, since COVID started in the beginning of 2020, I don't think telecom as a sector has been impacted much because of COVID. In fact, I would say that telecom has actually benefited from this period, from people working from home, and the access to remote technology demand has improved, and obviously there is a stronger demand for both mobile data and fixed broadband. So that has provided an impetus to the telecom sector as a whole. Secondly, we all know that in December 2019, all the telcos together implemented a tariff hike of 30 to 40%. So that trend of higher tariffs and higher average revenue per user has also benefited the sector. Both Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel has benefited from this rising tariff trend, and also from the stronger data demand. Vodafone Idea, as you know, is a weaker third telco, and it's a different story. They are struggling to raise finances to pay for the AGR cost and to fund its capex strategy.
Right. So overall, taking this positive impact into consideration, yes, we spoke about the tariff hikes. By when do you expect the next set of tariff hikes to come in place?
So we actually thought that the tariff hike would be implemented sooner than expected, but because of the second wave of COVID in India, and because of the fact that I think Vodafone Idea has not been able to raise finances to refinance some of its maturing debt and to fund its capex, so that has slowed down the another tariff hike. But I believe the second tariff hike will be coming from Vodafone Idea only, because I'm sure as they are talking to the investors and lenders, they would have to show that they can improve their cash generation by raising tariffs. And we expect that once Vodafone Idea raises tariff, both Jio and Bharti will kind of welcome that move. In the last quarter, average revenue per user actually declined because of the change in the interconnection regime. So on the EBITDA level, there was a neutral impact, but on the average revenue per user, uh, it declined for both Bharti and Jio.
Correct.
So we believe that there is going to be another tariff hike. It's just a matter of time. I think we expect two things to happen. One is once the situation for the second wave normalizes, and Vodafone Idea finds some investors, which looks unlikely, but there has to be some resolution there. I think those two incidents may provide, uh, uh, you know, uh, uh, an impetus to a tariff hike.
And by how much can we expect?
See, that's a very difficult question to answer. But philosophically, if you look at this industry, right now the average revenue per user level is more like 145 to 150, which is like $2, which is still not a very healthy level of tariff, I would say, when I compare India as an economy to, let's say, other regional countries in Southeast Asia or Asia. And there is definitely a capacity for the consumers to pay higher tariffs, and they can very well pay about 2.5 to $3 as their monthly telecom spend. And we expect that in a medium to long term, the average revenue per user can actually reach about 300 rupees levels.
Hmm. Hmm.
So whether it will take one round of tariff hike or two or three rounds of tariff hike, but I believe this industry, which has now structurally corrected to a strong two-player and a weak three-player
Hmm.
market, will eventually go there. So there will be, maybe multiple rounds of tariff hike depending on the circumstances. But the imminent tariff hike, which may happen in this year or early next year, could be anywhere about 10 to 30%. It's hard to guess.
Right. And with all of this, the government came out with a PLI scheme for the telecom sector, 12,200 odd crores. Uh, it's mainly aimed at increasing production and creating jobs. Any benefits to be seen for the telecom operators? Because yes, we do understand this is going to be more from the manufacturing perspective, but anything for the sector as a whole?
See, for the telecom industry, if you see, most of their equipments are imported
Hmm.
and they do have to pay US dollars for that. So from that point of view, they are exposed to some kind of a currency risk. As Indian rupee depreciates on an average, 5 to 6% every year, and they get most of their revenue in Indian rupees and they pay for these equipments in US dollars. So they get a bit of a hit when they buy dollar denominated equipments. So
Hmm.
if the local production improves and government provides some incentive to the local manufacturing capabilities and production, so from that perspective, it will also help the telecom industry to mitigate its forex exposure. And also the fact that when you have a diversified sources of equipment suppliers, ranging from domestic suppliers with European suppliers and the Chinese suppliers, then you also have some bargaining power. Then you can negotiate strongly with those suppliers and can negotiate the prices down.
Hmm.
But if you are too dependent on, let's say, one European supplier, Sony Ericsson, or uh, a Chinese supplier like Huawei or ZTE, then your bargaining power is much weaker. So it's always good to have, from a telecom industry point of view, to have a diversified set of suppliers, so to negotiate prices down.
Right. And with this, Nitin, with regards to where the AGR dues go, I mean, yes, the first installment they started paying in April 2021 as well. But do you think this is going to be a realistic target, taking into consideration that we already started working on 5G?
See, now situation is very different for all three telcos. Geo, as we know, is moving to a net cash position. If they have not moved already, they are in a very, very healthy position. They have a very strong balance sheet. They have got massive investments in the Geo platform from the likes of Facebook and several investors. So they are in a very comfortable position. Bharti Airtel we rate at triple B minus with a negative outlook, but that negative outlook is basically due to the India's sovereign rating, not due to their underlying credit profile. Their underlying credit profile has actually been improving. But Vodafone Idea is in a very precarious situation. They have a very weak balance sheet. Their auditors have already said that it doesn't sound like a going concern company. They are probably very close to default on their bank loans if they haven't already done. They are in the market to raise money to find investors, and both the sponsors, Aditya Birla Group and Vodafone PLC, are reluctant to put any new equity in this business. So for them to raise money and also to pay AGR amount and at the same time to fund their capex to remain competitive in this market is very, very challenging.
Hmm.
So in my view, we are definitely, gradually moving to a two-player market.
Hmm.
It's a very gradual process. Vodafone Idea will continue to lose market share to Jio and Bharti. And Jio, obviously the market leader now, will continue to gain subscribers at the expense of Vodafone Idea.
Right. So, with all of this, we're not saying that a relief package needs to be provided to the telecom sector, but do you think that the government could help the operators by, say, even when it comes to, say, lower spectrum pricing? Because I think India is in India, the companies are the ones who pay the highest amount with regards to where spectrum auctions are concerned. The rates are premium. Secondly, is there a possibility of getting taxes lower? Because I think almost 35 to 38% of the revenues of telecom operators is going as taxes to the government.
So I think I don't believe that there is going to be a comprehensive relief package for the industry, given we all know that there are several industries which have been negatively impacted by the COVID, but not telecom. So they have actually benefited from this period of COVID as the demand has grown. So a relief package, a big relief package is unlikely. In a way, government has provided them support to allow them to pay AGR payment with a 2-year moratorium and over the next 10 years. So that's in a way is a kind of relief in terms of cash flows. In terms of taxes, we have been talking about lower spectrum usage charges, lower revenue sharing with the government, but I'm personally not very hopeful that there will be any major relief from the government from in that sense. I think spectrum price is something which I think can be reduced, because in the last spectrum auction, as we know that 700 megahertz spectrum was left unsold, and there were also media reports that Telecom Regulatory Authority of India has been considering to reduce the 5G spectrum cost and 700 megahertz spectrum cost. So that is something I think government may provide.
Okay. And with this, Nitin, the industry has been demanding a lot of things with regards to where, as we just spoke about legacy levies, taxes, in fact, even rationalization of USOF, which is the Universal Service Obligation Fund levy, for a very long time. Now, to take sustainability of the industry forward, do you think all of this, or at least something, needs to be done from a longer term viability perspective?
Hey, hi.
Yeah, sorry, I just lost network. Sorry.
No
Yeah.
worry.
So Nitin, my question was basically with regards to where, the latest demand, I mean, a lot of demands that have been coming in from the industry as well over the years. Do you think something needs to be considered, especially with regards to where rationalization of the Universal Service Obligation Fund levy is concerned? We've spoken about taxes already, as well as the legacy levies that they've been looking at for a long-term viability.
Yeah, sure. So as I was saying, so let's look at each issue. So the first thing is on the comprehensive relief package. That I'm not very hopeful on. I don't think there will be a comprehensive relief package for the telecom industry. And as we know that there are several industries which have been affected by the COVID, but telecom is not one of those industries. So telecom has actually benefited from it. So no comprehensive relief package. In terms of the legacy issues, something like spectrum usage charges and lower revenue sharing with the government, I'm not very hopeful on those points, because again, these are some of the very sensitive issues which I don't believe government will be providing a major relief there. Universal service obligation is logically does make sense for them to use that money which has been unspent and lying with the government, to use it for the benefit of for the telcos, at least to enable them to provide fixed broadband services in the remotest area of the country. So that is definitely something which government should work. Not sure why government is not really taking those steps there. Uh, on the spectrum prices, I think there I'm quite hopeful. And as you know, that in the last spectrum auction, 700 megahertz spectrum was left unsold.
Unsold.
I think the TRAI, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, is also considering reducing the spectrum prices for 700 megahertz spectrum and also for the 5G spectrum assets. So that is something I think government can provide some relief there, because I mean, government should encourage faster rollout of 5G services in the country. And as you know, I mean, there are several countries within Asia which have already rolled out 5G services. So India is actually quite far in terms of rolling out 5G services. So it's lagging behind some of the neighboring countries. Singapore, Hong Kong has already launched. even countries like some of the South Korea, Japan, and several other countries in Asia have launched. So, and we need to do auction pretty soon because we need to give time to the telcos to prepare for the 5G launch. Because once you provide the spectrum asset, it will they will need some lag time period for launching the 5G services.
Hmm.
So yeah, that is something where I'm hopeful that there could be a relief on the spectrum prices in the next auction.
Right. And with regards to fund requirements as well, now if you talk about FPIs, they've been scaling down their investments in telecom. In fact, telecom has been one of the biggest sectors again in the month of May as well, where FPIs have pulled out. What do you think this would mean for the sector from a longer term perspective? Is survival going to be easy then?
See, in terms of the investment from foreigners, I would say now India has moved to a very different industry structure.
Okay.
Reliance Jio is the market leader. Bharti has actually received a lot of equity investments in the last 2 to 3 years. And since the Reliance Jio launch, at one point of time, their balance sheet was a bit weak, and they invited a significant sum of money from Singapore Telecom and other investors. So they have received equity. Vodafone Idea is a telco which is a quite weak telco, and it's unlikely that they will receive significant sum of money from any foreign investors, given
Hmm.
they have large debt on their balance sheet. So even let's say a foreign investor who wants to enter into India, they would go for a greenfield launch. It doesn't make sense for a foreign investors to just buy out Vodafone Idea, given the large debt. So that's the reason why we don't see much greater investments from foreigners in the telecom sector, because the whole structure has completely changed.
Hmm. Okay. And with this, Nitin, if you have to talk about the shift to 5G, any which ways it is moving at a crawling speed even before the pandemic. Do you think hurdles have increased? Because the government permitted 5G trials earlier this month, but it is yet to allocate the spectrum to operators to begin trials. So, do you think a 5G is something which could be likely in 2021?
Unlikely in my view, because so let's say, I mean, assuming that spectrum auction for 5G will take anywhere about 6 to 9 months, and from there on, you need at least 6 months to a year for the telcos to commercially launch widespread, at least in the metropolitan cities in India. And to actually for 5G to become a success, you need to have a lot of fiber investment. So fiber investment, connecting the towers and connecting your backhaul is
Hmm.
really necessary to do 5G services in India, because ultimately you're going to offload all of your data onto the fiber
Mhm.
infrastructure rather than using microwave. So I think India will take time to do the 5G service launch, and also to make 5G so ubiquitous that all the Indian consumers, at least in the metropolitan areas, will be able to use it. And also at the same time, you have to have an ecosystem of the smartphones as well. Now increasingly smartphones which enable 5G services are available at affordable prices, but I think further affordability is required
Mhm.
in the smartphone area as well, for an average consumer to buy a 5G smartphone and use those 5G services.
Right. So with this, as you spoke about the fiber network as well, I was just reading wherein the National Broadband Mission, which was launched in December 2019, said that about 70% of the country's towers will be fiberized only by 2024. And the price discovery formula for 5G spectrum needs to be given a thorough consideration. Now, taking this into consideration, if a report said that 2024, back then, how many more years do you think it will take for us to get 5G, a complete 5G network, probably?
I think if you compare 5G technology to, let's say, a 4G launch, I mean, when we launched 4G, it also kind of gradually improved to the
Nitin, I've lost you.
autonomous driving, or it may be machine to machine connection, or other virtual or reality kind of softwares which will uh, which will use the speeds of 5G. So you
Hmm.
need all those compelling applications, you need compatible smartphones, and you need government to act on it fast to provide spectrum assets to the industry. So I think it's going to take a lot of time. I think
Hmm.
we are talking about at least 2024, 25 to have a reasonable 5G service launch
Right.
and
Well,
commercial rollout.
commercial role. Right. All right, Nitin. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Always a pleasure to have you. Thank you. Good luck. Stay safe and speak to you soon again.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for having me. Thank you.